Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz, a transparent and engaging conversational dive into meaningful topics impacting local government in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck Insights is dedicated to removing barriers between the City of Bismarck and the citizens we serve every day.
Hello and welcome to Bismarck Insights. I'm Mayor Mike Schmitz, and today we're focusing on building inspections in the division that is run by Brady Blaskowski. I may have butchered that last name. I'm very sorry.
No, you did terrific.
Brady, thank you for joining me today, and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you came to where you are in building inspections and being the division manager, and what led you to that.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So I guess I got my start in the construction industry very, very young, right out of high school. I guess my first job in the construction industry was as a concrete laborer. I finished a lot of concrete, did a lot of carpentry work working for that company. We traveled a lot, unfortunately, so I did want something that was a little bit more stable as a career field. So I made the tough decision of changing my career path after several years of working in that job and started an apprenticeship program as a plumber. So I worked in the plumbing industry for many years, got my journeyman license, and my wife and I moved to Bismarck. I got an opportunity with the city to work as the plumbing inspector after their inspector had retired. And then several years later, our division grew. A plans examiner position was created, and I applied for that job and became the first plans examiner for the city of Bismarck. So it's a great opportunity. Kind of thought that was going to be where I was for the rest of my career. And a few more years later, the building official, that current building official at that time, got an opportunity to work for the county as their director of their new department that they created for planning and zoning. So I worked as the interim building official in the city of Bismarck for a year before deciding to apply for that position and obtain that more than 10 years ago.
And so now you're the building official, and you have how many inspectors that you oversee?
So there's 7 inspectors with our office, each that does various different inspections, but mainly they all have a discipline just dedicated to their background. So our plumbing inspectors have either a journeyman or a master license as a plumber. Electrical, same. They have a license with the state of North Dakota for that electrical part.
So what is the role of building inspections?
So, I mean, just kind of short and sweet. The role is just to ensure that buildings are being constructed in a safe manner, so that their occupants of those buildings are safe, and those that are first responders are also safe when they're responding to incidents in those buildings.
At what point in time should a person make sure they're contacting the inspections department? Projects that should be inspected are, kind of give the kind of a little general layout of what that might look like, so people understand that there's a time and a place that it's appropriate. So,
our contractors generally know, when to call. They've gone through the process many different times, but homeowners or and speaking in general to them, when they're doing alterations to a building that's changing the configuration of a space, that would be, one main time to call. And you can reach out to our office to acquire permits, ask questions through the process of permitting. The other things would be on those specialized systems like your electrical, your plumbing, your heating, those kind of things. Homeowners can do their own work in those disciplines if they own and live there in that home. But they would just need to reach out to us to acquire those permits before starting the project, and then at certain times and phases during the project, so that we have access to look at, for example, on the electrical, our staff has access to look at the wiring before it's concealed, and then also once the fixtures are installed, outlets are installed, they can test those outlets to make sure that they're working properly.
Sure. So let's give an example of a modification that would require a building permit versus one that maybe doesn't, to help.
Sure.
To help, like you said, the contractors probably know, but we have a lot of residents who do a lot of home improvements on their own.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great question. You know, an example for on a home improvement project would be if you're replacing the carpet or a tile floor, or even putting in new cabinets, countertops, those kind of things. Those don't need a permit. But if you're reconfiguring your kitchen or your bathroom, you're removing walls, you're moving, you know, your kitchen from one location to another, there's going to be some modifications there, likely with electrical, with plumbing, and even possibly mechanical, if there was certain elements that needed to be adjusted. So those would all be things that need a permit and an inspection.
So what about, I kind of have a real life example myself at the moment. I may have to replace my deck.
Okay.
Won't modify it, but is that something that needs to be inspected, permit for?
Yeah, so decks sometimes we always get into a little gray area with them, because a lot of people maybe just want to, you know, freshen it up and maybe put new deck boards on. You know, they're going to leave the substructure, the structure that's supporting everything alone, and they just want to, you know, replace maybe some old, you know, deck boards with new, you know, more modern type boards. Sure. Those kind of things we wouldn't require a permit for, but if you do change any structural modifications like the joists and beams, if the railings are needing to be replaced and it's a deck that's maybe, you know, 6-8 feet off the ground, we're going to want to make sure that those are supported properly, that the spaces between the spindles are narrow enough that a child's not going to get stuck in there. And that the stairs, you know, maybe those are going to be replaced. Those would have the correct rise and run to them.
Okay. And I'll bring that up because I just happen to
sure.
have a situation we'll have to see if I have to go through the process or not, but people don't always think about that. And I think that's a situation. It's not like you're making it different, but safety becomes the concern. Yep. And we don't want those structures not being held and supported appropriately, because the last thing we want is them to collapse and have someone hurt.
Correct. Yeah.
So to really go through the inspection process, there's underlying rules and laws that we have to follow, and that's really our building codes. And that's the heart of what drives what you and your team have to manage to, I guess. Where do those codes come from? What's the difference between international, national, local, state?
Yeah. No, great question. So there's a model code industry out there, and I think the leader in that industry is the International Code Council. That's really where any modern codes are going to be created. All 50 states currently have adopted some sort of version, I should say, of the model codes, depending on what year they're on. So that's where it starts. From there, once that industry or that code council creates those codes, each state has the opportunity to adopt those model codes, and each local jurisdiction also has the ability to adopt those codes.
The state adopts the code, but then locally we have some choices to make sometimes too. And how do we go through that? How often do we go through that, in addition to just sometimes fixing things?
Yeah, so model codes are created on a kind of a 3-year process. I kind of like to say it kind of starts and then and finishes at the same time. You know, once one code is finished being created, the next version is started to be worked on. So every 3 years, the state of North Dakota will take a look at it, as well as local governments will take a look at it. They're created through a process that's generally 3 stages, I guess is the easiest way to explain it, where the first stage is the Code Council will create committees and also accept amendments. Those committees will then review those amendments, and in the second phase of that process we'll host public hearings, public comments, and the individuals that either support or don't support those proposed amendments will have opportunities to speak, provide comment and testimony. And then the third final phase in that 3-year process would be the voting portion of it, where jurisdictions and eligible voting members would vote on those codes either in person or online. And then once the code is completed, the process is completed, the Code Council will publish those codes online. They'll start to provide continuing education to inspectors, to architects and engineers about the changes in those codes. And again, like I said, in the next 3 years, they'll start that process over, really just to allow for, change, new technology. Maybe various incidents have occurred over time that created maybe a need to add a new code for increased safety.
So once that's completed and then it goes to the state adopts, makes whatever changes they make to that, then locally we look at it as well to see if we have any alterations or need alterations, maybe a bad word, but need to adopt it slightly differently, a variance to it.
Yeah.
How does that work, and how much different are our Bismarck codes compared to maybe the state or the international code?
Yeah, so locally we try to stay right in line with the state process. So actually next week the state will be going through a review process with what they call their Building Code Advisory Committee, and they'll be reviewing the state amendments. So we've already gotten the international codes published. They're there for us to review. Now our state is looking at them and wanting to adopt. So those are open public meetings. They can receive comments and then provide recommendation on whether they want to see that particular amendment be passed. The next kind of point along that development cycle for the state will be in in September. September, when there is a voting meeting of eligible voting members throughout the state, like myself and other building officials throughout the state, township board members if they have building codes that they've adopted. So they'll vote on that. Our local process, I guess I like to try to stay right in line with that. We did have meetings with our local home builders association and other stakeholders just to kind of give them an idea of when the state process was going to be taking place, and those very specific dates of public hearings. So I anticipate we'll be doing more work after next week's meeting, having a better understanding of kind of what amendments are being moved forward with a pass or don't pass, and really reaching out to our local builders to see what is it that we would like to change, or if that we would like to adopt that's specific to our area. You have to remember that the international codes are just that. They take into account all geographic regions in the United States, and many of the codes may not apply to our region. Also, we don't provide the same types of inspections all the time due to limited numbers of staff, or just areas that we don't cover with our inspection process. So we may want to remove those from the code or make modifications so that it's clear that this only applies to this certain type of construction. So.
And is like the city of Bismarck's building code similar or dissimilar to Burleigh County's? Where are the variances, if you can just high level identify some of those? For sure.
I think the main differences are going to be with our administrative section of the code, where it's what permits do we require. There's certain items where we'll go through in probably a little bit more detail, because we will make amendments locally, where I think Burleigh County and other parts of the state will just adopt the state code by reference, and it's the state building code process that determines those amendments. They won't go through a local amendment process themselves. The amendments that are generally made at the state level are very high level. We understand that we want to, they want to let the local jurisdictions have their own control over things. So that's where you'll see the most difference between those two entities. But another community like Mandan, for example, they do allow or do make some changes to their ordinance when it comes to building codes. So you might see things like, for example, the door closers on a garage door, the door between a house and your attached garage, whether the self-closers are required to be on it or not. Egress window heights, so if you're standing in your basement, the threshold of that window, at what height is it? Certain things like that might be a little different, But yeah, nothing major. I mean, nothing that I think that any contractor would have a real issue with. But we'd like to be the same. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, I think that's the goal, is so that
especially when you're dealing with, crossing the line that's in a point in a map, and
Yep.
What you want to be as similar as possible.
Absolutely.
Obviously, so people know.
Yep.
So how has technology impacted building inspections?
Gosh, I mean, there's a lot there, right? I mean, technology for us, just from our inspectors and how they do their jobs, has changed. I mean, every one of our inspectors has an iPhone, an iPad, and they complete everything digitally. But also, it's changed for the building industry as well. I mean, things continually evolve and continue to grow from a technology standpoint. New products come out almost every day, and another really good reason why we update codes every 3 years is so that those products, materials, technologies that aren't addressed in the codes can be addressed, and we can allow them to be used in our community.
Okay. And obviously every 3 years may not be frequent enough for some code changes. Yep. And so do we occasionally have to modify our code or our ordinance of managing the code?
Yep. So we can do that. That is an option, but there's also some language in the code that we use that's just for alternate design materials. So the code doesn't come right out and say everything that's new is bad and you can't do it because we don't address it. It says there's other ways that you can do these things as long as you have evidence that this has been tested. It's a listed appliance or a listed material. It's gone through a testing agency, and it's approved by other industry professionals that it's equivalent to another type of product or material, and can be used in that application. So the Code Council and other model code standard organizations do have those listing agencies affiliated with them as well that provide that kind of research data for us to make a decision on whether we're going to accept something new that maybe isn't specifically referenced in a code somewhere.
Sure. But we also may find a situation where we had a certain expectation of foundations or whatever, and realize, we need to modify that.
Yes.
That would be something else that might happen. It may not even been addressed during the annual or the third year annual, whatever you want to call it, renewal. Do we fix code when it comes to that? If we find a need to do that that's appropriate and our stakeholders think it's right as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely an option. Any time to take a look at those things that may change in between that more formal process of code adoption, code amendment. There's a process for that. Taking that through the proper channels and getting the city commission's approval to do those things is definitely an option.
So just so people know that they identify something, they can have a conversation, and we can and look at what needs to be done. So part of inspections is, of course, the permits and licensing.
Yeah.
What are the licensing situations that your department handles, like your licensing or providing an ability for certain contractors to do certain work? There's some that are required, and then of course, what are the permitting processes like, and what's the time frame to get those issued?
So, like I mentioned earlier, the state plumbing board, state electrical board, they have licenses that are universal throughout the state for contractors in any community, so they can work throughout the state and anywhere, get permits, that sort of thing. The one piece that the state doesn't have that we've started along with a few other communities like Fargo, Grand Forks, and Minot is mechanical licensing. So we do license our mechanical contractors. They hold a license with us and they renew that annually. I think the good thing about licensing is just it's really giving the consumer and the citizens assurance that there's a certain level of knowledge that those individuals have. There's an expectation that with that knowledge there comes a responsibility to do those things correctly, and certainly safety, knowing that they've gone through the proper channels to become licensed, and they're getting permits through our office to make sure that things are installed safely.
So just to help people understand mechanical, not everybody understands what mechanical is. So let's define that for them. What is a mechanical contractor? What do they do?
Yeah, so mechanical contractor would be responsible for, installing a furnace, modifying any ductwork, installing gas piping in your home. Really the heating and cooling of your home or commercial building would be under their scope of work.
Okay. I just want people to understand that, because I don't think everybody does when you say
sure.
mechanical or HVAC.
Yeah.
How about on the permitting side? What's the lead time someone should be applying for permits? What permits are we issuing through your department anyway?
So we have many different types of permits and different review times for those permits. So in general, like a standard homeowner's permitting for a shed or a deck or a garage, something like that, is fairly quick. Most of the time, it's within the same week that they apply for it. And generally, if it's someone that's applying for the first time, and maybe even the only time that they've ever worked with us, there's probably a lot of back and forth, just trying to make sure that we understand correctly what they want to do, make sure that they're putting that structure in the right place, they're not on an easement, that kind of thing. So our front office staff can work through most of that with people, and we may end up getting our residential plans examiner involved if it is a more complicated project. But I would say, generally speaking, that 5 to 7 days, would be the maximum that we would take, and some are even just issued right over the counter if it's a simple enough project where you can get it that same day. More complex projects or brand new construction, like a new home or a new commercial building, those vary in time frame just based on the complexity, I guess.
Sure.
Many of our home builders are very proficient in the process, and they can get their permits very quickly. Again, probably within that same week they apply time frame, because they know exactly what they need to submit, and the time frames fall into place for them because they have everything that they need with that application. Commercial projects take a little longer because we do have a site plan review process and some other departments that are involved in that process. It's not just building inspections division. So those can take, as far as the plan review, can take several weeks to get through the building plan, but the other process with site plan can also take the same amount of time.
Okay. You already talked about the specialization of your planner or your inspectors throughout the department, but just roughly, how many inspections are done in a year, and how's that changed over the last, say, 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I looked into that a little bit just when we would talk about it, and I know looking back, probably over a 10-year time frame was a lot of the data that I could find. We're averaging around 4,000 to 5,000 permits a year, and anywhere from 9,000 to 15,000 inspections. Obviously, the market changes each year, so those things can fluctuate. Outside of that 10-year time frame, we did have the large oil boom out in the western part of the state that did create a lot of activity here as well, and we've now seen it kind of normalize over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think that average is probably around that mark of 4,000 to 5,000 permits, and 9,000 to 15,000 pretty regularly.
And what does a typical inspection look like for someone who's never been through it? What can they expect? I'm probably more, obviously commercial, that's one thing.
Sure.
But for most of our people here, it's probably what's a residential inspection. If you're having something done, electrical or plumbing or kind of a major remodel.
Yes.
What's going to happen? How often is somebody going to show up out there?
Yeah. So most of the time, what we're going to have like a homeowner get a permit from us on would be like a basement finish permit, where you're going to also have the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical, and all of that looked at during a basement finish permit. Many homeowners want to do that work themselves or might subcontract that out to their contractor. So they may not always be at the job site or at their home during those hours unless they've completed that work themselves. But we do a rough-in inspection on anything that we're doing. So prior to sheetrocking, prior to insulating, prior to basically concealing any of the work that we want to inspect, we would come in and take a look at it. And then we would want to come back once it has been sheetrocked, once it's been insulated, and those fixtures are now installed, whether it's plumbing, electrical, or mechanical. and we'll take a look around. If it's electrical inspector doing that work, he's going to plug into some outlets. Plumbers may run the water just to check for any kind of leaks, make sure things working properly. But really, it's on a basement finish or a homeowner project. There isn't too many inspections, maybe one or two inspections. Same for like a deck or a shed. We'll site the location for a siting inspection. We'll come out and take a look at where you're planning to place it, and then come back again to take a look at the framing of it before anything's concealed, and then a final inspection just once everything's finished and complete.
Sure. So, talked about inspections. Now let's talk about how we're engaging in the community, specifically you and the Director for Community Development, which is your boss, Ben Arith. Who are we meeting with? How are we engaging with those people that you're probably having the most day-to-day contact with, who are affecting construction in the community?
So, since I've been with the city, which is, it's hard to believe, but about 18 years now, we've always had meetings or informational meetings that we provided to contractors. But I think maybe once or twice a year. But I think what we're trying to do is engage more with the development community in more of a conversation and more of a a way that we can generate some new ideas and some ways to basically deal with the challenges that we have in the construction industry. So we create a communications plan. We're hosting meetings at our Public Works department. They've got a large meeting room that's really been useful in providing some presentations to them, information more recently about the code adoption. But I think moving forward, looking at educational opportunities as well, trying to find those gaps where maybe we are finding issues with inspections or with our processes, and having opportunities to bring in people to talk to them about how to improve a process, or how to educate them about how to do things a certain way that maybe they're not aware of. So it's been really well received, I believe. But I think there's also opportunities to grow that as well, because many people get information in different ways these days. I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like that one-on-one conversation or to be in a meeting room, but other people like things to be accessible to them, themselves online and through websites, and kind of finding their information for themselves, and maybe just reaching out if they have a specific question about something after they've already done their own research.
So do we have a regular cadence right now where those meetings with the home builders or the development community are happening?
We don't have like a set time frame of how often we do it. I think we do have other meetings that we participate in that are quarterly meetings, but I think ours are more generated based on need. I think my goal would be to just continue to provide more, continue to reach out to our development community and ask, is there another topic that we can try to address? But I'd certainly like to provide them, quarterly as well, different from another type of meeting that I think we're already having with some of our other stakeholders that are more broad, overarching meetings. These would be more specific, general topics that, like I say, more educational or more building relationships, if you will, trying to cooperate.
So when we're having these meetings right now, I'm pretty well aware that I know in the residential development community, the home builders and those builders around that, and probably the developers who are probably members of that, that's happening. What about more commercial? Like the commercial contractors, is there any kind of opportunity that we have where we're engaging with them on a regular basis? There are fewer of them. And they're probably they may run into more unique things than a home builder.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a terrific topic to talk about, because I know it's something that I have had kind of sidebar conversations with a few of our commercial contractors that we work with regularly, and I guess I'd like to have more meetings like that, utilize a venue like our Public Works department to bring people in, and those meetings may only be 10 or 15 people because we may not have as many that are in that construction industry at the commercial side, but certainly want to reach out to them and find out what is it that we can help with to try to make the permitting process go smoother, the inspection process go smoother, Maybe there's things that are misunderstood or things that they want to have us take a look at to change to make the process go a little smoother. So,
Well, I'm going to encourage them to call you
yeah, for sure.
today.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So what are the resources that you can provide to the building and industry from your department?
Like I said, there's a ton of information. I mean, infinite amount of information out there on the internet. I know the International Co-Council does a terrific job of providing information out there to help people find the answers that they're looking for. I guess I would encourage people to research their website, the references that they sell and produce to work with us, so that we're kind of talking the same language, if you will. But certainly reaching out to our building inspectors, our plan review staff, and even myself if they have questions. Hopefully we're available to them, but if you can't get us on the phone right away, I know there's a lot of activity this time of year. Yep. Certainly by email. Our emails are all on the website as well.
So what challenges do you feel face the building inspections division, or opportunities?
Yeah.
They're probably one and the same sometimes.
Challenges for building inspections specifically, I guess I don't know if I have anything just specifically for that. For the building industry itself, I think we've heard there's challenges with having skilled individuals wanting to get involved in the skilled trades. Obviously, there's construction costs are increasing due to materials and labor costs and that sort of thing. So those are the big challenges in the industry.
Sure.
We're aware of those challenges and certainly open for conversations with our stakeholders and contractors and developers to try to find solutions to that. But yeah, I don't know that there's a specific building inspections issue or concern, but more just the industry itself. As far as like solutions, technologies, things like that are coming available, that's the biggest excitement for me, is that we always seem to focus on things that are the problem, and if we look back to how things were done years ago to how they're done today, we've solved a lot of things through technology, through new products and materials being utilized. That I'm hoping that will just continue to grow, continue to be available for people to use as solutions. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, Brady, thank you for joining me today on Bismarck Insights. It's been delightful, and hopefully we gave some information to our residents and citizens.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for watching Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz. If you have specific topics or questions you'd like addressed in future episodes, email mschmitz@bismarcknd.gov. Or call the City of Bismarck at 701-355-1300. To learn more about the City of Bismarck, visit bismarcknd.gov or follow us on a variety of social media channels by searching BismarckND.gov. Bismarck Insights is a collaboration between Dakota Media Access and the City of Bismarck. You may find Bismarck Insights episodes on Government Access Channels 2 and 602, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV devices, on Radio Access 102.5 FM, and on demand at freetv.org.